Yo, what's up, everybody?
What is up? We are back for another episode of the Pixelists podcast. And we're going to be talking about Loki, a soul crushing OMG type episode.
Ugh.
It's going to be tough to get through this one today. I'm excited to talk about it, though.
I know, dude. Me too. And it's been hard because if you're familiar with us, the Pixelists, you know that we just recorded another piece of content on Exandria Unlimited, and right when we started that, we had both just watched Loki, and it was so hard for us not to talk about it. But I'm glad we
I
finally
know.
get to now.
I know. I had literally just finished Loki when we jumped on to do Critical Role. And it's like all I wanted to talk about. I was like, I hadn't had any chance to like really read about anything. I still haven't had much of a chance to really get into reading other theories. But yeah, wow, what an episode!
It really was. And I feel like we have so much to talk about. So I guess let's just jump right in. Um, yeah, as always, I'm Will. That's Blake. We're the Pixelists. And Loki episode 4. Okay. I guess quick recap to get us going here. It opens and we got a flashback of Renslayer coming and capturing and pruning young Sylvie's timeline, takes her to the TVA. We see her get processed, but then we also see her escape, all in this short time, still as a young girl. She kind of steals Renslayer's time pad and boom, is gone. So presumably she's been running ever since. We then see a quick kind of opening teaser of Renslayer going down and seeing the Timekeepers. They're ominous, the room's smoky, and credits roll, I think, right there. But then Mobius is starting to get a little bit suspicious of what's going on with the TVA. They're kind of planting those seeds, but then we catch back up with Loki and Sylvie in the present time on Lamentus 1 at the end of the world. They're kind of sharing a moment there when back at the TVA, all of a sudden a Nexus spike, as they call it, shows up. And so they're like, boom, that's where they are. So the TVA finds the two Lokis, goes and arrests them before Lamentus is destroyed and they die. Loki's put in an interesting time prison, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more. While the two are separated, Loki's put in a prison. Sylvie is also put in a different room, and meanwhile, Mobius again is starting to question things. And B-15, the hunter that also the hunter the what am I trying to say here? The hunter that is it the one that captured Sylvie? I don't know, but the one that got enchanted by her. There we go. Sorry, brain fart. She as having some lingering effects from that enchantment, and she's also questioning things. She goes and sees Sylvie and is like, "Hey, explain this." And they go through a time portal door back to the rocks cart. And Sylvie enchants her again, kind of shows her memories of her past life, and shows her that she is indeed a variant. After that, we see Mobius steal Renslayer's time pad, and he kind of discovers the truth as well. After he sees what happened to C20, Renslayer tells him she was dead. But really, it seems like she possibly is dead, but it was a cover up because C20 knew the truth as well. So now that Mobius knows, he goes and gets Loki out of that time prison and is like, hey, you were right. Can we trust each other? Let's go save Sylvie and, take this place down. So after he gets Loki and they exit the time prison, Renslayer and her crew is waiting for them. She found out that he stole her thing. And one of the biggest, oh God, moments of the episode is they just prune Mobius right then and there. And pretty emotional, pretty hard hitting. And then Renslayer takes the two Lokis down to the Timekeepers to meet their fate. When all is about to be lost, seemingly, B-15 shows back up, having been, converted to the Loki's sides, helps them get out of their prison collars, and a fight ensues. Basically, everyone is incapacitated except for the Timekeepers and the Lokis. Sylvie decapitates one of the Timekeepers. Boom, big reveal. They're robots, animatronics. And the Lokis are like, what's going on here? We got to figure this out. And boom, second crazy moment of the episode. Our Loki is then pruned by Renslayer, who had been unconscious, but I guess came back. And Sylvie immediately disarms her and is like, tell me everything. And that's where the episode ends. And but we do get the post-credit scene of Loki awakening in a seemingly post-apocalyptic New York, surrounded by more Loki variants, presumably.
Mhm.
And sorry, I feel like I super stumbled through that, but that was episode 4 for the most part.
It was a train wreck of emotions. So it's hard to talk about it all in such a short span of time and not want to pause and dig in.
Yeah.
But you did a great job. A lot happens. We saw some of our theories pan out to, hey, we're not always right, but we had talked a lot in last episode on what was really happening between Sylvie and Loki. And I think I even said, if it turns out that the TVA just shows up to save them, I'm gonna be really bummed out. And that is what happened.
Yep.
Turns out we were Mephistoing a bit.
We were, I guess, man.
Even though it made sense to us, I don't know. And yeah, I mean, even though it was the route that I wasn't that excited about, I think they actually did it really well. Because for me, it felt like it would be cheap for them to somehow, they're on Lamentus 1, but the Nexus spike, not just a branch, but like a almost straight up spike, that was interesting. It was like, okay, something's happening here that is allowing them to locate them. And that's all I cared about, was that it wouldn't be like a cheap, gimmicky, I remember him telling me about a place called Lamentus. Let's go check there. Like things like that would have been really, really underhanded for me.
Yeah, right. And I guess let's just jump straight into it. And I guess since you just mentioned it, we were very wrong. And bro, I was convinced, and I don't know if you felt this way too, up until we got to the point where it was clearly not an illusion, but I kept waiting for the reveal of like that this had all been fake and everything in the last episode had been fake. And when that Nexus spike happened and that's how they ended up getting away, I was like, oh, I guess this isn't an illusion. So that still gives me a lot of questions on like, is Loki just that powerful with the telekinesis on that building part? Does he maybe still have a time stone? I feel like he would have used it in certain situations, but
yeah, it seems like the whole time stone theory, which I know you were like, I don't know about this. It seems like there's no way that's the case. I mean, they're presumably, the fact that they were facing certain death, not only on Lamentus, but then also in captivity, it feels like there would have been so many times to use it.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he hasn't used it, to me, communicates, okay, he probably doesn't have one. And then the other thing I think that felt weird about it was just such a display of power that I think, I guess Disney or Marvel, was going cool factor of he catches this building and throws it back. But those of us who've been fans for a long time, it just felt out of place. It was like, okay, that type of show of power is not the Loki we're used to. But I guess it just is what it is.
Yeah,
right?
I guess.
And we didn't get a cool enchantment reveal of I've been who's playing who. Turns out no one was, I guess.
Yeah, I would have put so much money on that was the case. So I was blown away by that. And like you said, it at least didn't feel cheap in the way that they, just found them. But I mean, while we're here, what do you think that was? What is that Nexus spike? What they even called attention to it being like it's different than just a branch, right? Like something almost even more impactful was supposedly happening in that moment. So do you have any ideas on what you think maybe what that was?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of thoughts as I was watching. The two things that I thought was, one, I was thinking of like the very pure physical aspect of like she puts her hand on him and they're sort of comforting one another, and that's when it happens. And I thought, oh, well, you can't have the same matter in the same space, so to speak. Like two objects that are the same can't exist in the same space. And which doesn't really make sense though, because there's been plenty of times that there's been, I think that they've had physical contact And I think I was probably overthinking it. But that's what when I turned to my wife, I said, I think that's maybe what's happening. I don't know. Maybe it's like breaking the law of physics. I don't know.
That's an interesting take. Yeah.
But, the other thing that I was thinking about was, this was sort of playing in my head as Mobius was really pissed off at Loki and being like, really, I was your friend. Like, how could you double cross me?
Mm-hmm.
And called him a narcissist. You fell in love with yourself. What is wrong with you? Like, you're the ultimate narcissist. And so I thought, yeah, maybe it was like the warm and fluffy take on this as the power of love. I don't know, which feels a little silly, but at the same time, it's like two Lokis falling in love. That's never probably been accounted for on any timeline, because there's never been more than two Lokis in a timeline. So that could create something. And then I read a Reddit comment of someone's theory that said, and it plays off Loki's line of essentially, we don't die. And you have not just one Loki, but two Lokis about to die when maybe they weren't intended to die. And that created the spike. I'm not super big on that theory, because they're presumably being taken back to the TVA to be pruned.
True.
So it doesn't quite make sense to me, but those were the three things that were in my mind. And I'm going with number 2. I'm going the love angle.
Okay. So
how about you?
Well, I want to get into that specifically too. So, but man, I don't know. I mean, everything you just said is a plausibility to me. I feel like it has to be something, which that's probably a dumb statement. Like, of course it's something, but I don't know. Like especially since it wasn't just a branch; it was like a special branch. So, like,
right.
My best guess is that I'm kind of leaning love, but not in a romantic way. That's kind of my take on it. I know a lot. I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of people are apparently really mad that, like, they're like, how are they, like, why are they doing this? Like, pushing a romantic relationship between, like, an entity that is itself, which
I guess I don't fully, I haven't really seen that, and I'm surprised. Like, what's the source of the frustration about it?
I don't know. I guess they just, I mean, I'm not one of those people. It doesn't really matter to me in that way. But just, I get, it might just be one of those things where it's just like, in the fandoms, there's always going to be people upset with something. But I had taken notice of, like, a lot of different comments about, like, let's just pretend episode 4 didn't happen. But maybe they were also talking about the fact that, like, Mobius was pruned. But I mean, given the end of the episode, he might still be around, right? I don't want to go too far off track right now, but
you better. I'm gonna riot.
Right, dude?
I want a scene with him on a jet ski before this season's over.
We need that, or we're going down to talk to Kevin Feige, and letting him know. But so I don't personally, like, subscribe to that. Like, that upsets me on a personal level or anything, but I do just think. And kind of they kind of played into that in the episode, because that's, like, Mobius was kind of getting upset at that, like, you are such a narcissist, you fell in love with yourself, and that was his offer of an explanation as to what caused the spike, right? So I almost kind of feel like that's a misdirect in a way. So I don't really have a better plausible answer. So my answer is that it is love, but it's kind of, and sorry for getting, like, sappy here, I guess, but Loki, to me, so far, not just this show, but the MCU and on the whole, he is a very, like, deeply flawed character, which that's what makes him interesting. And I feel like he's very, like, self-loathing. Like, he's very narcissistic and, puts up the front, but I think those are all walls, right? And I think he like, is self-loathing, like I just said. So I think that maybe this show and what happened in this moment is, like, he is recognizing, like, the beauty and the self-worth through the lens of seeing another version of himself. And so to me, it wasn't romantic. It was like, okay, like, someone finally learning to, like, accept and love themselves. Like, okay, I don't always have to lose. I don't always have to be alone. I am worthwhile. And, like, kind of recognizing that through her.
It pairs well with the time prison, where Sif is basically saying you'll always be alone, and you're awful, and it's that is sort of to drive deeper this theme of exactly what you're talking about, the self-loathing, the worthlessness, the callback to episode 1 where Mobius says, hey, you're designed to lose, basically. Like, you were designed to fail, and you will always be, to take another certain entity's phrasing, a cosmic disappointment. I mean, that is just who you are. And we have Mobius, who the reason I say it pairs with this is because Mobius, as they're leaving the time prison, says, you can be whoever you want. You can even be good.
Yes.
Which I thought was a great final line between the two of them. And you could see, Loki gives kind of like the, "Aw, thanks, man," like gives the smirk. So yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of my take on it, and especially what you're saying about Sif and that moment with Mobius. I feel like those are all kind of like little tidbits that all kind of come together to make this picture. And I guess while we're here, I wanted to point this out at some point during our episode, but with Sif, the time prison, he was reliving the same moment of like getting his ass kicked, which you'd think that like that was the torture, but my take on it was that really the torture part was of her telling him like, you're worthless, like you're going to be alone, no one loves you. To me, that was the real pain of that, because there's even the one instance of the cycle where he's like on his knees and he like is genuine and is like, I'm sorry, I did it because this, that, and this, like I know I'm a terrible person, blah blah blah. And she helps him up and she doesn't punch him, but she still says, you're always going to be alone, you're worthless. So like the physical pain wasn't really the point of that, in my opinion. It was about the like emotional self-realization. So that again, what ties into why I think maybe the Nexus spike was this self-acceptance moment for him. And especially because I think Renslayer said it earlier in the show when they were talking about Loki. She was like, his purpose is to be the loser. Like that's his purpose on the timeline, and that's how it is. And so maybe him realizing this is maybe like a fundamental change in his role in the timeline. He's like no longer going to be just that loser because he's had this like self-actualization moment. And so maybe that was the Nexus spike. Like his role has now been changed. And that's my best guess.
I thought it, I love it, man. And I think it was also a great way to progress his character, because we said this in episode 1 that it feels cheap to take the villain of Avengers, of the movie, The Avengers, and now he's the Loki we should cheer for, trust. Essentially, it almost felt like they were trying to take the Loki we loved at the end, at the beginning of Infinity War, and replace him, despite none of that character development happening.
Right.
And we mentioned in episode 1 about how, seeing the highlight reel of his life, realizing that his mom essentially was murdered because of his decision making, and then his eventual death. We talked about this being, is this enough to really progress the character? And one of the things that I think I had said was, well, it is a 6-episode story, and so maybe it's just for the sake of timeliness. Yep, he's good, now you can cheer for him. I was really happy that they didn't leave it there, but last night's episode progressed it even more. I think you're right that self-acceptance, that self-worth, and again, to echo Mobius's words, you can be whoever you want, you can even be good. He's realizing I don't have to be alone. It was powerful. It was, I think how they've written the dialogue in such an I just like how it's not overly abrasive. I mean, the dialogue's really well written. Separately, the show is just also so well shot, man. I mean, some of those early scenes on Lamentis in last night's episode were just amazing.
Yeah,
they've put a lot of craftsmanship and love into the show, and it's every episode just continues to be really enjoyable.
It really does, and I feel like this is as good a time as any. I've been meaning to say this like every episode, but the score is just so incredible. Like it's really just amping up the whole thing for me.
Oh, dude! I mean, and someone told me this is WandaVision's theme song, which I don't know if this is the case or not, but it seemed like a random comment. And I thought, okay, that doesn't really make sense. But they said when B-15 arrives in the Timekeepers chamber, that WandaVision's theme song plays, which I was like, doesn't make any sense because it's not Wanda. It's not Wanda. You know,
Yeah,
that doesn't. But anyway, regardless of whether it was or not, that moment. I mean, I think I'm obviously like totally sold on this show, total fanboy. But like that moment where she walks in, she says, "For all time, always," and then the music just hits. I mean, I was like ready to cheer. I was like, "Here we freaking go!" Like this
that was
is
awesome.
phenomenal. And I don't mean to jump ahead. I'm just building on your comment of the score.
No, yeah.
They've created an experience that is energizing and exciting in the comfort of your own home. And that speaks to, we've said it for years. We said it on this show, but Marvel puts so much care and attention into their shows. And I think it's well appreciated. At least it is by me.
For sure. Like, you know, we could go on forever about this, but I love that, you know, as successful and as big as they are, they could easily be phoning it in at this point. But no, we're getting people that are
Totally.
passionate about it and, you know, still putting out really high quality content, which you can't take it for granted. Because, I mean, I won't name any names, but there's a lot of other content out there that is very, very subpar, but it's like massive IP, you know, and it's just not being handled well. So,
right.
Really appreciate that it is here.
Yeah. Well, so picking up where we left off, they have this spike, and we've kind of thrown out our ideas for what it could be, and this awesome moment where they're sort of accepting their fate. You know, the planet is erupting in the chaos of these chunks that are crashing on the surface, and we see this big blast wave heading towards them. When the TVA opens the doors and allows them in, or excuse me, basically takes them back, they're imprisoned, or they're put into in prison. Sounds like they're thrown in jail. They're basically put into holding cells separately. Let's talk about the dialogue between Mobius and Renslayer, because it's always felt a little. It's been flirty and it's been fun, but I thought the actress for Renslayer did a great job of, it was one step farther in terms of, like, she was overly reassuring him to the point where my wife and I, we were like, something's up here. Like, she's obviously not telling the whole story. And I think what's great about Mobius, like, think about how well this has been written into the show. Every time Loki tries to pull one over Mobius, he's like, no, like, I'm not. We've learned that Mobius is incredibly gifted at sniffing out BS, at knowing what's really happening, knowing that he's not getting the full story. And so how naive then, I guess, of Renslayer to be like, yeah, great, you know, it's good. Well, hey, I'm gonna take care of Sylvie. You know, you just watch your Loki. And Mobius is rightfully like, wait, what? Like something's really off here. What do you think about that dialogue?
Yeah, everything you just said, I agree with. And it even called into question their whole relationship for me, because I think the whole, like, Renslayer is kind of pushed up against a wall in this moment, you know? I think she was trying to, like, overcompensate to make sure that, like, she knows what's going on with C20. She realizes there's kind of, like, a breach in the confidentiality things they're trying to keep a secret. And so I feel like she's laying it on a little thick, which makes me wonder if she was always just manipulating Mobius with their, like, cute frenzy relationship. Like, perhaps that was always like a tactic with her, you know? But yeah, the actress, which I cannot think of her name right now, so that's terrible. Maybe it'll come to me in a second. But I thought she did a great job this episode, because it's, you know, she nailed that persona isn't the right word, but, like, you know, I thought she was lying and being manipulative. And not to jump ahead here, but, like, especially, like, in the elevator later when Sylvie's like, you know, what was the Nexus event? She's like, I don't remember. You know, she
delivered so well.
Yeah.
Delivered so well. I was like, you suck. And you said it with so much pride. And I just, it's amazing how well Marvel can craft its villains sometimes, because you see in this episode, she's sinister. She's not like just and I it's refreshing to see villains who aren't like the overly like, ah ha ha ha, like, I don't know, like the silly, like almost kind of childish, like
Yeah.
overly evil. And yeah, sinister is how I would describe her. I think you're right that she's frankly has manipulated him for a long time, but he had no reason to suspect anything else. And this small truth that's been imparted into him, hey, we're all variants, is enough to sort of wake him up to, okay, that this dialogue, something's not making sense here. Including in this conversation is when Renslayer mentions, hey, C20 is dead,
Yeah.
which I think, we don't know if she's actually dead. I'm assuming she actually is dead. And it even says deceased. It doesn't say pruned. Maybe later
Right.
in our episode, we can talk about maybe some of the terminology, because it's got
Yeah.
the outro got me thinking about some of the language, reset, pruning, and
Yeah,
then
me
actually
too.
deceased or dead. So for me, the fact that she's dead just speaks more to how corrupt and evil the TVA is, which we talked about in the last 2 episodes. Hey, this feels like an organization where they come across as very noble for the good of all people, and yet are sort of serving their own interest as a whole, even if they're doing things that aren't morally right, like
Right.
disintegrating entire timelines, or even killing an enlightened soldier who we've come to sort of imply that this is someone who's been under their has been in their I can't think of the phrasing, has worked for them for quite a while, is not just a grunt soldier, but someone who is
Right.
anyway, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but
No, I know what you're saying. And yeah, it just makes me wonder. And if you still have more stuff on specifically their conversation, let me know. I don't want to go away from that. But just on the note of Renslayer, I wonder how much she knows. I mean, she clearly knows that everyone's a variant. Um, how long has she known that?
yeah, and that's the thing I'm wondering, is that exact details. How long has she known? Because my wife, so we jumped on to do Critical Role. I could hear my wife playing it over and over and over again for like 45 minutes. And today she was saying how when Renslayer, they have the interview or the interrogation with C20,
Mhm.
and Renslayer basically says, okay, we're cutting this. She leans in and looks at the camera, and her face of shock to me was like, oh crap, we got this on camera. Like, we need to cut this.
Yeah.
My wife's take on it was a look of shock of,
She didn't
holy
know that?
crap, is that maybe she didn't know, but she's in so deep that it's kind of like, I don't care what the truth is. I'm going to walk out my purpose, even if this may be true. I have no idea. But that was an interesting take from my wife. And I don't know quite how I feel about it, other than there is this big question of how long has she known, especially has she been the route that I sort of go is that she's known for a long time, and it's part of the reason why she has some of these trinkets, but especially the high school pin is maybe she knows, and she selfishly has kept a little trinket of her own just out of the nostalgia of where she's come from.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
What do you think?
to me, I think she's known, maybe not always. I mean, also it just brings up like maybe she knows because she's a judge. Like maybe you know more once you reach that status within the TVA. But it also seems like something that is a very tightly kept secret, right? So, right now I'm team. She probably knew and has known, and not like just was revealed. But I like that idea that like she is just in so deep that you know we got to handle this, even if she did just find out. But kind of on that same note, I was started to wonder, did she know the timekeeper? Like if she did know and has known, does she also know that the timekeepers aren't real? That was like an animatronic thing? Or do you think that was a reveal to her in that moment, even if she did know about the variants?
It seems like, because she wakes up, she prunes Loki. It seems like there would have been a bigger reaction of like, wait, what? Like, oh my gosh. And she almost seems to look past that and go straight to deleting Loki.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me thinks she does know, which would make sense if our theory around Kang the Conqueror is true or somewhat true.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that doesn't sit right with me is in early on in the episode when which by the way, I've always thought of the Timekeepers as being like up, like at the top of the building. You said down. I don't know which one it is actually in terms of like, are they going down in the depths of the
Yeah, I don't
TVA
know why I said
or are
down.
they? I have no idea actually. But she's that in that first scene where she's going up, she's terrified. She at least seems terrified. I mean, you can see the
True.
weight of this meeting being really heavy on her. It's intense. You can tell that she's apprehensive about it. That emotion for me doesn't sit right if she's going to see these three characters who she already knows. This is kind of a big show.
That's a really good point.
So I don't know. I mean, it's like, why would you act that way? And also, why the song and dance if you already know? I mean, because is it for like the elite soldiers that are in the room?
Okay.
So that like rumor, hey, yeah, they really are like lizard people. Or it just seems it feels weird for her to. I don't know. No, I don't know.
That's a really good point. So I want to make two comments there. One, great point about her fear at the beginning, and just as a plausible maybe reason why, if she does know they're fake, that she maybe still has fear, is that they're still obviously being puppeted by someone. So maybe she, like, even if she knows they're fake, like she was going to talk to the puppet master and still feared, whatever they were going to do. But yeah, I wondered the exact same thing about if she does know, like if she knows it's all a charade, what was the point of bringing down the Lokis? Because no one else was in that room besides the Lokis, her, and those guards you spoke of. So if they're just gonna just delete them, who's that show for? You know what I'm saying? Like if she knows, but if she doesn't know, I mean, maybe the show was for her, but I don't know. It seemed to me like she would know, but that there's some kind of glaring flaws in that. But maybe we'll see, I guess.
Well, and there was some damage control happening in terms of like maybe it's less about the people in the room and the people not in the room. So for the other hunters or analysts or whatever, oh, there goes the two Lokis who are being taken to the Timekeepers to be pruned personally. Remember in the previous conversation before Mobius was pruned, hey, they want you there personally to also oversee it. So part of me wonders if this is less about the Lokis and Renslayer and more of the optics of we're going to really be heavy-handed with this just to make sure if there are rumors about whatever C20 saw or believed that it wouldn't spread beyond I guess it's just making sure all potential chaos from these theories would be rooted out. So I took it more as it's an external show than really anything in the room. Although, again, we don't know the identity of who's controlling these puppets, but it did feel more for that person's ego to be able to personally say, I'm dealing with you myself after you've created so much chaos for the timeline.
Yep.
Because what they've done is no small thing. I mean, keep in mind that Sylvie sent those time bombs basically to a number of different places. Probably took a lot of work to clean up. And so I can imagine this puppeteer being like, hey, I'm a little pissed off at you. Like I want to tell you myself how obnoxious you are.
Yeah, good point. And were they super hard to understand for you? I could not tell what they were saying at first. I had to watch it a couple times.
I definitely rewound and turned on subtitles.
Do you think that was almost intentional? Because surely they could have cleaned up that audio, but I don't know, kind of plays into the whole
Does Christopher Nolan make his movies intentionally unhearable?
Who knows,
this dude's a genius as a director, and yet every movie I'm like, why can't I ever hear the dialogue? I mean, I can only assume at this point it has to be purposeful. I don't know why they did it. I don't know if it just post-production was like, it's good enough. Even though it was a bit unintelligible, the energy and the power of it still communicated to me Timekeepers. I was like, oh yeah, these are all knowing beings with like this groaning voice. So yeah, even though it was a little annoying, it was like, okay, yeah, it kind of fits though.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
well, before we move away from Renslayer, I had a couple other things on her. Is that and this kind of plays into what we mentioned a little bit earlier. You know, she wouldn't tell Sylvie what the Nexus event was, and we can maybe speculate on what we think it was in a minute. But part of me wondered, like, if Renslayer does know, you know, these secrets, that maybe she even knew back then. I think there's probably a less chance. Maybe like maybe when she found became a judge, she found out, or you know, blah 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 blah. But part of me wondered, you know, if this corruption runs deep and she's been in on it from the beginning, maybe there wasn't even really a Nexus event there, but she just was told by the Puppet Master or whoever it may be that, hey, like, this Loki variant's going to be a problem. Go take care of her. She's like 5 years old right now. It'll be easy. And so that's why
Mm.
she came and got her. And because, you know, we never really got to see the trial or anything. She escaped before then. So, you know, I don't know how much agency hunters have in terms of like, I got this variant, you know, if they have to like prove that they were doing something wrong, or you know, I don't know. But
It kind of it makes me think of the movie Minority Report, where Tom Cruise is basically being set up
yeah,
to this system that shows you something's happening. Is it's a setup to make him look guilty. And you saying that makes me wonder, yeah, is the TVA and the timekeepers, who I'm fully in on now, are totally self-serving. I mean, whatever's happening is for their own benefit, not the benefit of all mankind,
right.
or humankind. And so, yeah, I didn't think about that, but them seeing this one person and being like, yeah, this is going to be a problem for us, even though they're not really going to create a Nexus event, even though they're not really doing anything wrong. Let's just go ahead and suit our own interests and take her out. And I think the reason it's so important that you mentioned that is going over to Sylvie's origin story, which it seems like Marvel was revealing she is a combination of, I say combination, I mean, she's more Lady Loki than she is Sylvie, but has the
Yeah,
Sylvie name. We got her origin, and she's not doing anything wrong. She's just sitting and playing with toys,
yeah, it's a
you
little
know,
girl.
yeah, just a kid, just a normal kid. And so that, to me, I hadn't thought of that theory that you said, or thought of it being like that. But to me, something so innocuous and innocent, I think, yeah, maybe it was just an attempt to take care of an enemy that would show up later later down the road.
Yeah, I don't know. I could easily see that being the case. And again, I don't want to jump too far around here, but speaking of Kang, like, if that is what's going on, if he's the puppet master and this whole charade is just to like manipulate time so that it, you know, it guarantees he always is like stays on top, you know, maybe that's what he's used the TVA for. He's like, all right, I'm in control now. I'm going to make sure that I'm always in control by manipulating the timeline. And you know, she is romantically involved with him in the comics. So this is a lot of what ifs, but if it is
Hmm.
Kang and they are romantically involved, you know, maybe he was like, go take her out, you know, because this is going to be a problem for us one day. But I don't know what it was about it, but just in that scene when when Renslayer comes through the door and you know she's playing with her toys or whatever, like Renslayer has the time pad or whatever, and it's like looking at it, and like to me, like the implication is like, oh, I'm checking to make sure this energy is correct and this is a Nexus event, but she just gives kind of like a weird look, like, okay, like maybe almost if
Hmm.
she was feigning that because
Hmm.
this is bullshit and they're just trying to get this girl. But
Yeah, I mean, and I do wonder in the elevator, which again, that elevator scene was just so well delivered. And I love how much they've made us on Sylvie's side, basically.
mhm.
Um, but Renslayer, yeah, just saying, I don't remember, with so
Yeah,
like almost gloating that she doesn't remember, how basically saying you are so insignificant to me. And I do wonder, do you think that she really has no idea? Or do you think, I guess you would be on the side of, not only does she remember, but it was maybe even very purposeful why they basically picked her up to prune her?
yeah, I think she remembers 100%. That was just like a malicious, like, you're like, make her think that she's
Mm.
insignificant, but she 100% remembers. Because I think literally the dialogue before was Sylvie saying, do you remember me? And Renslayer says,
Hmm.
yes. And then she asks about
Hmm.
the Nexus event and says, I don't remember. So I think it's either, I mean, one, I think she remembers no matter what the case is, but she's not telling her because what we just talked about, it was bullshit and they were just taking her out. Or it's just like you said, like to just not give her the satisfaction of being
Mhm.
important. She's just not going to tell her. But
Mhm.
okay, so assuming that it wasn't BS and there really was a Nexus event, any theories on what it might have been? I mean, clearly I think the explanation they quasi gave was that, she was a girl, but up until that point, nothing really too different from the normal timeline had happened. So that's why she had made it to 6 or 7, however old she's supposed to be
I,
there.
I, I think I think answering this question, it points to the I'm trying to think of the right phrasing. I keep thinking of it as like the lack of morality. When I say morality, I mean like I think of the Steve Rogers, like literally we're going to do the right thing for the good of everyone, and there is no means to an end. We don't trade lives is one of the things that he said when it came to Vision sacrificing himself. You have this organization who we've said it again and again that it feels like it's not really something that it's not an organization that's really doing things for the benefit of all people, but that it might be self-serving, might even be evil. And we see in the propaganda content that something as insignificant as being late to work or wearing a blue shirt instead of a red shirt, things like that can create a Nexus event. And it's so inconsequential, but the result of that is and I know we're going to talk about terminology, but I'm just going to be a bit more overt here. Basically, something else so inconsequential can lead to your death, the death of your family, and the death of everyone you know, and everyone that you've ever cared for and ever will know. I mean, your timeline gets totally erased.
Yeah.
And that is just what happens because of something that was so meh. I mean, playing with toys. And so I don't think we're going to get a big reveal of this is what happened the moment. For me, it just serves the point that the TVA is playing with people's lives to suit their own interests. And we hear Sylvie talk about it. You took everything from me. I mean, you took away my life for what? For ultimately no reason. And it just plays into the themes of free will, chaos, predestination, all of those things. And I kind of like the reason I ascribe to this is because for me, it further cements how awful the TVA are for there not to have actually been a really meaningful, significant moment, but that they're just, like I said, they're just playing with people's lives. It's like pieces on a Monopoly board. It's like, yeah, I'll move you here, do this, whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, we basically called it with the corruption. We were on the
Oh yeah.
corruption train early.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But-
We're 2 of 3, I think.
Yeah, so far. And hey, maybe there's still an illusion that it's gonna be revealed, but I think
We'll
that
take
ship's
anyone
probably
we can
sailed.
get. Yeah. I'm still floored that the time pad was actually broken.
I know,
I'm like,
what?
I kept waiting for it to be like, okay, hey, by the way, here it is.
Yeah,
and
right.
I'm just like, it makes no sense. But hey, it can't all be perfect. I don't know. Who knows? But one other thing about Renslayer is, did you notice how when Mobius, and I think after Mobius has been given this detail, because we have 2 conversations. We have the one that's pre-Loki saying you're all variants, and then we have the post one. The post conversation, they are relaxing, they're drinking, they are filling out paperwork, and Mobius is prying, but he's being very forthcoming. He's saying, "Hey, what was up with that? Why wouldn't you let me interview or interrogate Sylvie? Like that was so weird." But one of the details that I picked up on is when Renslayer signs the report and hands the pen to him, he looks at the pen. He goes, huh. And then he doesn't say huh, but he looks at it and then he signs it. I think that might have been the high school pen, like the trinket pen. Because we saw earlier when he was signing, he said, "Oh, where'd you get? I don't remember this one." And so I wonder if, as he's formulating this theory, he in a moment sees the pen again and says, "Okay, yeah, this from your life, your former life." I don't know. Did you pick up on that detail,
No, I
or
didn't.
I'm digging too deep, or like I said, for me, it was kind of like, oh, there's another detail. I don't know.
No, I didn't pick up on that. That's interesting. I want to go back and watch that because I was looking for something in that moment, but I didn't find it. And the reason I was looking was one, because of the pin scene from earlier, but even though I was looking, I didn't even notice that was the same pin. But also, they specifically called attention in the earlier episode to how she signed her name. So since there was new papers, I was wondering, like, is there going to be a difference there that maybe like is an allusion to something? But I was clearly looking too deep for something. But that's interesting because I was looking for something in that scene, but I didn't find anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, then as we know, he takes the time pad, or he swaps the time pads, which I'm thinking, you idiot! Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And goes down to the library, I guess, or the records area, and it's so interesting to me, a place that's so technologically advanced that it's sort of like this ink blot pad that it's just some of those details are a little bit, maybe it's just the flavor of the show creation of the world building, excuse me. But I don't know, what do you want to talk about next?
I have a couple notes here. One final I forgot to say this, so sorry, but one final thing on the Renslayer thing, I thought it was interesting and just shows her manipulation, is one of the things she says to him in that when they're drinking, that conversation was that, friendship like ours is uncommon and worth fighting for. She's like really laying it on thick. Yet then, 2 scenes later, doesn't even let him offer any explanation. It's just, you're immediately pruned. So like clearly she's completely full of shit,
and you know what's funny? I didn't know that was going to happen. Obviously, no one did. But I was thinking, ooh, you just got friend zoned. That's what I was thinking was, we're friends. And I was like, oh man, Mobius, I'm so sorry, man.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what pushed him over was we're friend zoned, so that I'm going to do my own thing. But and something else I want to ask you about. So we saw in the post credit scene that being pruned doesn't mean disintegrated. And we don't know like the implications of this, if there are entire worlds and timelines that have like gone into like a recycling bin or something. I don't know. But something that we threw around before was, are there other Mobiuses that he's never run into himself, and maybe that's who keeps leaving the drink stains. Another thought was, when he's pruned, is he basically being sent off to be reset, and he's going to come back mind wiped, working again? I don't know. I mean, and do you have any ideas on this? Any thoughts on this? I mean, do you think she knew, okay, this is goodbye to Mobius? Or do you think it was like, oh, I'm going to have to start over with him again? I mean, I don't know.
Do I think Renslayer knew?
Yeah.
You're saying? I don't. Yeah, that I don't know. Like, it depends on how deep she's in on this, right? Like I don't know. So just to be completely clear here, pruning, we're talking about when you get disintegrated, right? So to me, and this could explain a lot, is that probably only very few people know this. So is Renslayer one of them or not? I don't know. But maybe, like you said, when that happens, you kind of get sent to limbo or whatever it may be, what we saw at the end of the episode with Loki. And then maybe you can be brought back from that, and the being brought back from that is maybe like what wipes you or something in that process, and then you're repurposed. So, we kind of talked about how nonchalant they were, like in the first episode, I think, with just disintegrating that guy that didn't have a ticket. Well, maybe it's because, that isn't really complete death. It's just like, okay, now they're in the reset zone and we might pull them out if we need them, or whatever it may be. But I guess it just begs the question of, clearly we saw Loki awaken in this place, and we saw him surrounded by what seems to be more Lokis. So is it possible that it's because he's a Loki, because he's a god, because he in some way is special, and so he persists? Or does everyone persist and show up in that world or another one like it? I don't really know where I'm leaning right now. I'm hoping that everyone does, because I want Mobius to come back.
Right.
But yeah, my best guess is that is part of the mind wipe reset process, that like you get Zizzle Basil destroyed, and then by some form or function you can be brought back, mind wiped, and set to work at the TVA or something.
Yeah, it almost seems like this limbo type place is almost like a purgatory to determine should someone be reset and brought back, maybe to work with the TVA, or are they permanently deleted, I guess? And the implication I got was it's something like that. And these Lokis that we see at the end have sort of broken free of this system. And I think of that because one of them says, if you don't come with us, you will be dead.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be over for you. So I don't know. Yeah, I really do hope that Mobius is going to come back. I mean, he's such a fan favorite. I mean, what a likable character.
Yeah.
And man, the fan service of his final lines of riding around on a jet ski. I mean, he could have said anything. And
all he wants.
Yeah, all he wants. Give the man his jet ski. If we don't get it, I'm telling you, we're going to lose it. But I'm hoping we're going to see him again. And for me, the reason I think when you talked about like what could this place be, the reason I think it is a place where like everyone's getting dumped into is, to me, that's what makes sense of how he'd run back across Mobius again, presuming that he will. Maybe he won't. Maybe it is just like only Lokis do. Sorry, your friend's actually gone for good. But otherwise, if they're not, I'm thinking, okay, they have to run back into each other again at some point. What better place than where they are now?
Yeah. So many questions that we couldn't possibly answer, but did those 4 Lokis we saw, which I'm counting the alligator as a Loki,
Yeah, he has the crown.
Did they know that that's where Loki variants appear, so they're just waiting for more Lokis to show up, or why? Yeah. Like, how did they know to be there, or to be expecting that, or maybe they didn't, and they just happened to all be squatted up right near where that happened.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that it's New York. It's like a post-apocalyptic New York because the destroyed Avengers Towers in the background.
Which I didn't realize that, and so I went back and saw someone make the comment. I went and saw the still of that shot of the 3 or 4 Lokis, and that was a cool detail.
Yeah, and I think we maybe talked about this in our first episode or at some point. But there's a shot from the trailer of the show before any episodes came out that had our Loki, well, what we now know to be there, because it shows it's a different shot and it's only him in the shot, but you can see the destroyed Stark Tower there. And I have so many questions. Like, is it this purgatory? Is it for everyone? Why is it on Earth? If so, I don't know.
Well, we assume it's. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I just don't even know what I'm.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm just formulating this now, so this could be totally way off base, but we're assuming, or at least I'm assuming, that it's like almost like the time holding cell. It's like this dimensional purgatory that is very familiar to Earth. Is it possible that this is a spot on the timeline? Like maybe this is the very end of the story. I mean, because Renslayer says when she's talking to Mobius about friendship and like, hey, we're friends forever, she says something along the lines of like, you've seen all time like I have, like, where this goes. And so part of me wonders, is this the end point, the end of human civilization, and everyone kind of just gets dumped there because it's already like total chaos? And maybe the Timekeepers are trying to prevent that end date from happening. I have no idea. I don't know. But I do wonder, are we seeing Loki at a spot in time rather than some created superficial world for the sake of holding pruned prisoners? I don't know.
I think so. I think it probably is someplace on time, like some junk timeline that they use as a garbage bin, I think that I would subscribe to that. It's still just interesting to me that it's, on Earth in New York. Like, maybe my first initial thought pre episode 1 even airing from the trailer, I was like, oh, that's the timeline where Loki wins in Avengers and the world kind of goes to ruin. I don't really think that's the case necessarily anymore, but I do just think, I mean, and maybe if this place is just for Lokis, that's their punishment. It's like, here, go live on this world that's destroyed because of you.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I think it probably is just like a junk timeline, junk dimension, but like it does exist on the timeline. I just want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, Tom Hiddleston had said prior to this episode, hey, we're going in a direction you're not going to expect. I'd say that was accurate. I
Yeah.
mean, we said last episode, okay, what are our theories and where this is going? And we had said, okay, we're whether it's in the next episode or by the finale, we're heading back to the TVA. I mean, they
Right.
wouldn't showcase the door to the elevator if we weren't heading back there. Didn't expect them to go back there so soon, and it seems like now we have this total new direction of who are these Lokis, what's going to happen. I'm really excited for episode 5. I mean, I honestly can't even really imagine where does this go from here.
I know. I want to know everything about these Lokis, and I've been wanting to know when Richard E. Grant was coming in. He's the one that is, if you're not familiar, the actor that's playing the one that's in like the most ridiculous costume there at the end, the like
Right.
OG. So super excited to see him. Which I think he might have even been credited as like, I don't want to say because I don't remember, but there's him, the one that is seemingly holding maybe Mjolnir. I don't
That's what it
know.
looks like, yeah.
And then Kid Loki, and then the alligator, which I really hope it's a Loki and not just like a pet.
The
But
way I saw it described was this was on some news site. They described them as credited as classic Loki, which is Richard E.
classic. There we go.
Grant, Kid Loki, boastful Loki, which is the one holding the Mjolnir, and Komodo Dragon Loki.
That's awesome.
So I don't know. Which I don't know enough about the comics to know like are these Lokis that have been given. Are they canonical in the sense of if you go to a certain issue, it's like, oh yeah, that's boastful Loki. Here he is. I don't know anything like that. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, the classic one I think is 100% an allusion to just like the original Loki comics, because the costume is not like a one for one exact thing, but it looks a lot like it. And then Kid Loki is 100% like a thing, and it could be setting up the Young Avengers, which they've teased that in almost everything they've done so far. Because we've got the two kids from WandaVision, they're Young Avengers. We got the Hawkeye show. Kate Bishop is coming in that; she's a Young Avenger. In Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Eli Bradley's grandson, you know, his or nephew, I don't remember which one.
Yeah.
He's a Young Avenger, and then Kid Loki is too. So like they've have all these like little seeds planted, and maybe
we got
they might not
Wolverine's
even
daughter. You
what?
know, we have Wolverine's daughter, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm
she's definitely coming. But
Yeah.
I just am excited to see.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like what other theories we've had in the past that we've realized either isn't the case or still up for grabs.
I guess,
And go
or
ahead.
not to cut you off, I was just gonna say, I guess one thing which we maybe already said this, so my apologies, but I guess it's pretty much confirmed that Sylvie is a Loki. You know, she's not
Right.
gonna be just some random girl that got given powers, or so.
I think it's probably cleaner. I mean, it either like we've said this a couple times that it's a 6-episode series or season because I think they confirmed season 2. It's a story that needs to be told, and so for me, her just being a Loki makes more sense than this other storyline of a Loki imbuing power into her.
Yeah.
And I think them calling her Sylvie does enough to still separate her as I'm a separate character. I'm not just Loki. In fact, it's probably why we've heard her say many times, "Don't call me Loki. That's not who I am." So I like how where they've taken her character so far.
Yeah, and I like that they just, I like that she is a Loki. Like I think that's a cool direction to go. But actually, on that note, something that stood out to me is in the Mobius and Loki when they're talking in the interrogation room. Loki refers to her as Sylvie, and he's like, "Oh, Sylvie," like and he's barbing him about it. But the way that came across was that he didn't know her name was Sylvie, which to me doesn't make sense because they literally had her name in their files that Mobius gave Loki in episode 1 or 2. So that really confused me, and what I'm really leaning toward right now is a production editing error because they did something similar in WandaVision, and so if not like an editing error, like maybe like that sheet that said Sylvie was like not supposed to at least not be seen, or maybe not even been there in that shot from episode 1, I'll just say.
Yeah.
But
It does seem like an error. I mean, because even when Mobius is talking to Renslayer later, he says Sylvie, and she's like, "Who?" And he's like, the other Loki. So it's like you have the file. So I don't know. Yeah, it does seem like an error.
Yeah, so I can sleep well at night with just assuming that's what it was, but if that's not what it was, I need some answers. Like, and the error also makes sense for why like no one ever told Loki that, hey, it's a female, by the way, like we thought you should know. And you know what I'm saying? Because like there was the big reveal that she was a woman when he was literally reading the file on her earlier, so he should have known that. But
yeah,
so editing error, I guess we'll go with that.
Right. Something else I wanted to mention, I loved, so whenever B-15 came out of her enchantment back at the Roxcart Mall, not the Roblox Mall, the Roxcart Mall.
Yeah.
You could, and again, credits to this actress as well, in the emotion on her face of, you can tell she has seen something.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't come out, she's not ready just to go right back at it, like let's capture them. It's you can tell that not only is she a bit disoriented, she's unsettled. And that was, I know we talked about like, okay, is there something there? In this episode, we see that she's really having this moment of, holy crap, what's going on? And I think she's so tactical and smart and not as naive as C20. I think it's probably part of the reason why she's asking, where is C20? What happened to C20? Is because she's sort of also not just caring about her friend. I think she's also wondering, if I show my hand as to what happened to me, then whatever's happened to C20 could also happen to me.
Agreed.
Because C20 in her mind has totally disappeared. We don't know where she is. Well, so I love the scene of her sort of barging in, asking Sylvie, what did you do to me? And then that awesome scene where they're back at the Roxcart. Sylvie shows her past, and it was a moving moment. You could just, the way it was acted. I mean, I loved how she sort of comes out of this and says, wow, I looked like I was happy.
Yeah.
I looked, and again, it speaks to the TVA on playing with people's lives, where it's very unsettling to have these variants presented as malicious. Even the cartoon in the propaganda video, the variants kind of snickering and haha, I'm messing with the timeline. And that's been sort of their perception of variants, is they are junk to be dealt with. And I think she has this moment of, wow, this is totally different from what I've always believed. And then naturally, as we see later in the episode, she ends up defecting and helping our two Lokis, or Loki and Sylvie. I enjoyed that, because episode 1 made it seem like this would be like the unwavering, this is the ultimate soldier for the TVA. I don't know. I've liked her story and her transformation as well.
Yeah, it's been great. Like you said, that moment was just powerful, where she's like, I looked happy. And I think that also served to kind of like soften and have us empathize with Sylvie even more. Like, that she brought her to the Roxcart where her magic now works again, and she's like, show me. She could have just taken advantage of her and completely enchanted her and gotten away, but instead she actually shows her. It's like she wants to help B-15 in that moment. And so like, it's just another instance of like, okay, Loki's not just evil, like and then one other thing you made me think of is B-15, when she was thinking about all this back at the TVA, she looks at that poster, which is another propaganda poster that says confirmed through deletion. And it's just like, she's got to be thinking about all this. Like, I had a life and we're just out here destroying people's lives. Yeah. Love her whole arc.
Now, is that a writing error on the poster of, because they've always been very particular on pruning, and here we see deletion, which seems way more final. And are they talking about like pruning the timeline, like deleting everyone on the timeline, or are they talking about you're confirming that this variant's taken care of by deleting the variant? Some of this phrasing isn't really familiar to me, or it isn't clear to me what they mean. And I don't know if we're just mixing words here, or if the perception for the most part has been that pruning is deleting someone, and no one's none the wiser that they're actually being sent to this garbage bin.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because it on the poster it was the word deletion, so maybe they do just go hand in hand, but prune is like the more PC way to normally
The flavor
say it.
word. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's
yeah. I will say again, just talking about past theories and thoughts, we had talked about maybe Sylvie's never been to the TVA, and yet how could she know so much about it?
Yeah.
And we found out that's not the case. She has been there, but she was so young that presumably maybe her powers hadn't come of age yet, and so she didn't even realize her powers didn't work there. Speaking of her powers, though, I saw a Reddit comment, and I've only had time to sort of glance through some thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've seen this one too, or if you've put any thought into this already, but someone mentioned that in the Timekeepers chambers, it appeared like, and I don't know if they were talking about the sigil on the wall behind the Timekeepers, or if there were sigils that were located around the room. But this one particular Redditor was saying that they looked familiar to, in WandaVision, the sigils that are used in the basement to eliminate Wanda's power.
Interesting.
And then what Wanda eventually then uses in the clouds in the final fight to eliminate, what's the villain's name?
Agatha,
right. Basically to neutralize Agatha.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true that is. I don't know if the person's reaching because I haven't gone back to look, but it would, if something like that is present in the TVA, maybe the puppeteer has placed those runes to basically neutralize anyone who comes into that space.
That would make a lot of sense. Like that would explain it with the rules that they've set up in this universe, right? So I would like that. That would be very clean. Be very interesting. And we've seen that there is some sort of magical, mystical elements here because those reset grenades, it looks like there's like orange magic that then mixes with purple magic, and that's what creates the reset, which, orange we've kind of associated with like the Sorcerer Supreme, like that's Doctor Strange. And then purple is kind of like, I think Agatha was purple. So like maybe like kind of good and evil magic mixing, to put it really simply. And if that is the case, then it would make sense that also magical runes are what's, preventing magic in the TVA. I hadn't seen that, but I like that. That's really interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Any other theories that we've now tied up that we need to talk about, or any future theories that you have now about what's going to happen?
I don't think we have any past ones that we didn't talk about already, but there are two final things that I've got that I wanted to at least mention. The first one's real quick, but I just liked the quick shout out we got from Mobius that was like, I've dealt with Kree, Titans, and vampires, and that's kind of like a fun nod. And I think the first allusion we've had to vampires in all of the MCU, but it got me thinking that Blade is coming, so maybe that was just kind of like the first nod to that.
I took it as that nod as well, that we know Blade's coming, we know Blade's being rebooted, and so for me it was a setup for the Blade franchise coming back, which is a whole separate conversation on, because I've never associated Blade with Marvel, even though it is, just because this was pre Iron Man, which there's actually been a handful of Marvel movies before Iron Man. But Iron Man's really what set off the tone and flavor of the Marvel movies as we know it.
Right.
So, and then also I took it to mean him saying that was referencing all those characters on Earth, because we keep seeing these things happen on Earth. And you and I talked about, okay, why is it always humans? Why is it not all these other places in the world? And even though we know we've seen... in the episode, for example, when Sylvie sends the time bombs, that they are actually going to other places that are being affected, and yet we keep coming back to Earth. For me, I don't know if that means that there's some huge implications for Earth being like the ultimate. This is where the maybe we're trying to prevent like an ultimate apocalypse that is centered on Earth, or if it's just like, fanfare of, hey, we live on Earth, and so what can the audience best relate with? Earth. And so we'll have everything be about Earth. I don't know what's happening there. But to me, I took it to mean that Mobius is saying, I've dealt with all these things on Earth at some point in time, which maybe not. I mean, it might be a stretch. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I that not to dive back into that because we already did our whole discussion about why humans and stuff, but I'm still wondering if we'll get that answer. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of like another wing of the TVA that's all blorbulars. I don't know. Uh, but the only other thing I had was we kind of touched on it a little bit because we of who maybe the puppeteer is. We talked about Kang, but I think that's the only thing we talked about. I didn't know if you had any other ideas, and kind of hand in hand with that. I'm not saying that this is the puppeteer, but Miss Minutes. There's more going on there that's not been revealed yet. And what's weird, what sticks out to me is that she is a technological marvel. She can exist in technology, pop out, be corporeal, can interact with things, has some intelligence, is able to respond in real time to things being asked to her, like very, very technologically advanced. And then we have these animatronic timekeepers, like from Chuck E. Cheese. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
if that's the most important thing of your whole propaganda and your whole like cult that you're trying to build, it's just crazy to me that Miss Minutes is like 1,000 times more complicated than your timekeepers. So I want to know what's going on with her. Maybe she's even the puppeteer. I don't know if I really am going that far yet, but there's clearly layers to her that have not been revealed yet.
Yeah, and for me, the difference in technology is you're sort of feigning a what's the word I'm thinking of? A carbon-based being rather than something that's AI related. Is you have these three figures that are trying to be presented as living, all-knowing creatures. They're in a dark, foggy room where you never really get that close to like really see. So I understand a little bit of a difference there. I am wondering more about who is the puppeteer. I think it's Tony Stark. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just thinking like what crazy, like, it's Thanos again. I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be either Kang or someone new entirely who is getting set up as a significant big bad. One of the Reddit comments I saw was someone was saying that maybe it's the Eternals, which I don't know enough about the Eternals. I haven't read anything about it. I'm just waiting for the movie to come out. But it seemed like there was some traction around the Eternals sort of as these characters who sort of guard humanity. They've now taken this role of now even trying to guard time itself. I don't know.
Interesting. I don't buy that. But I mean, what do I know? But yeah, I don't know. If not Kang, if not Miss Minutes, who? What? Maybe even a Loki. Like maybe a Loki has infiltrated it, and like he's like, all right, no other Loki's gonna get near my gig here. Like, and maybe that's why they take out a bunch of Lokis. But
what do you think they say to Sylvie? You're a child of the Timekeepers too, Sylvie. Like, was that them trying to protect their illusion by saying, whoa, like, hey, we care about you? Or like, was there something implied there with that line?
I don't know. It's a good question. The Timekeepers say that, right?
Right before she's like, yeah, right. And then she throws the sword, and which that was a really cool scene because the other two just laugh immediately
Yeah.
and then power down.
That's right.
That was kind of sinister too.
To me, that was the puppeteer, right? Like, they were like laughing at this feeble attempt to have actually done anything to well, I guess it could be multiple people. Like, it still might be three people that are behind the scenes, but for some reason I'm getting the vibe that it's just one entity, but I guess it could easily still be three. Because to me that was just like one entity laughing, but through to the two remaining timekeepers. But yeah, I don't know. To me, that line just initially came off as trying to push the propaganda, like maybe try to get through to her in that last moment. It almost maybe in like a self defense mechanism, like they thought that she was coming to harm them. But yeah, I don't know.
There were a couple other things that I wanted to mention, and I've totally forgotten what they were.
Nice.
Yeah, but all that to say, I mean, I am really excited for the next episode. This episode was just amazing. It's one of the best hours of television I've seen in a really long time. It was really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And part of me was thinking, like, when people watch the Pixelist, are they going to be like, man, these guys just love everything they watch? Because I wonder, like, should we be more critical? But at the same token, I'm thinking I don't want to be critical for the sake of being critical.
Right.
It's a great show. It's a well-made show. And naturally, we're recording about shows that we feel like are worthy of praise and that have a lot that's worth talking about. So I don't know if we'll ever do a review on something that was just junk, unless it's like something out of place, like a Marvel movie comes out that's just awful.
Yeah.
And we're like, how did this get by? But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, thus far, like you said, we've been kind of giving everything a pretty glowing review, but I like to think we'd be critical when necessary. Yeah, objective. And like one thing that I still think the fact that it was an illusion kind of gives some plot holes in a few things that happened. So, you know, like one of which being the telekinesis building. So, I mean, it hasn't been. I've loving the show so far, but it has not been flawless. You know what I'm saying?
You've heard it here first, guys. Blake loves the show. Will hates it. Let us know what you think about it. No, I'm just kidding. Well, cool. Well, anything else you want to talk about from this episode?
I think we pretty much covered it all, man. And I just can't wait for these last two, man. I just imagine it's going to be nonstop, like craziness from start to finish to wrap this up all in 2 episodes. Which is not that it has to be wrapped up. It won't be, because you know MCU always leads into other parts of it. But
it's going to be tough when it's over, because this is the end of a series of shows that have been a common factor in our living rooms for the past, few months, more than that actually. And we have some awesome movies coming up. There are some shows that will be happening in the fall, but when this is over, it's going to be really strange.
Yeah. Oh, is that a Doctor Strange pun? Because maybe we see Loki and Doctor Strange too?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Well, that I get that. Before you forget, we gotta do our thumbnail before we peace on out.
Okay, yeah. What's this one's thumbnail? I'm just gonna try to be struck with grief over because not only was I like totally shell shocked in this episode, but one of my drugs is getting on YouTube and watching other people's reaction videos. So like I was watching this one lady who was watching the episode, and like when Mobius gets pruned, she pauses it and just like explodes into tears, like her hands are in her face, she's sobbing, she's inconsolable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love this. I don't know why. It's like when Game of Thrones was on air, I would do the same thing. It's like this character dies, and like I just, for whatever reason, I'm like, oh yeah, the reaction videos.
Oh, yeah, so that's good. That stuff's good.
I'm gonna channel my inner reaction video and just be wrought with grief over what we watched last night.
So okay, I don't even know what I should do. I guess I'm gonna just be like,
yeah. I like it.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we got it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's today's episode. For you guys who've been listening, we so appreciate it. Absolutely. Check us out on Twitter at PXLists. Make sure you also continue to follow the YouTube. Hey, we want to know what awesome theories, guesses, where's this going, or even just really nice details in the show. We'd like to talk about the small bits of flavor that make this show what it is. So any of those things that you've seen, be sure to let us know in the comments and tell us about some of your favorite parts. And thanks for joining us for the ride. We're excited to see where this goes, and we'll be talking about episode 5 next week. So stay tuned for more of the Pixelist podcast.
Oh, baby. Till next time.
See ya.